Hey there, my sister, my friend. Welcome to the Dr. Tanya B podcast with me, Dr. Tanya B. I am here to help you be your best, most authentic self, your life, your way. We're going to talk everything self care, self love, mindset, and personal growth with a splash of hippie woo. I am proud of you for giving yourself this time today, so let's not waste time and let's dig in. Okay, with me tonight, I have Julia Napini. I am so excited about this conversation. She has quickly and easily become one of my favorite people in the entire world. You'll get to figure out why that is here very quickly. But Julia, let's just start with a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got there, because I think this story is always very interesting. And also the success that I believe that you have created is absolutely phenomenal. So I want you to share a little bit about how you managed that and how you maybe got out of your own way to do that.
Thank you. I would be happy to. But first of all, I just feel incredibly lucky to be able to be here with you and spend this time. Grateful that we connected. So thank you for the opportunity
Mhm.
and platform. So I am Julia Napini. I am a licensed social worker. I worked in multiple different settings with different populations and was struggling to find value alignment in the places that I was working and the people that I was working with. So I decided to start my own practice when my daughter started school because I had gone through a divorce and I was really prioritizing the limited time that I had with her. And
Mhm.
one of the only ways that I saw to be able to do that was to make my own schedule, not have to ask permission to take time off, and to really do the work in a way that felt like it was in alignment for me. So I started in 2017, solo part time. Took me about 2 years to feel confident enough to leave the job that I was in at a hospital and do it full throttle. And I was lonely. I missed working in a team. I had more referrals than I knew what to do with. So I started to expand in May 2021. I hired my first employee and we're now a team of 30. So it has been incredible exponential growth. It has far exceeded any of my expectations. And I am very proud of the work that's being done. So, as I was doing a lot of the starting my own business and expanding my team, a lot of my colleagues were unofficially asking me for advice. And so I was helping them and really enjoying that. So I decided to make that into its own business. So I own Compassionate Consulting Company, where I basically help other entrepreneurs do what I've done, teach them all of my tips and tricks, try to get them there faster than I did, and really embrace that CEO mindset because it is very different than just merely being a business owner. And I started the podcast, The Compassionate Climb, where we talk about being successful in business while maintaining integrity that you were just interviewed for, and I can't wait to share with the world.
There's so much alignment between the two of us. I just love it so much. And I think that's why we connected so quickly and so easily. But there are like four things that I'm like, ooh, dig into this thing. And so we're gonna have to try to make sure we get to some of those things. Um, and one of the things I want to talk about and sort of get across to the audience has to do with emotional intelligence. But before we get to that, I want to go back to your alignment and your ability to prioritize, because you know that self-care is my jam. It's the thing that I talk about all the time. And I think that if you want to, here's my tagline, if you want to feel better, if you want to be better, if you want to do better, you have to start with you. And so I imagine that working full time, having a child, being a single mom, and then also working this other business that you're launching at the same time as an entrepreneur, you're saying that you're like moving into alignment, you're saying that you're prioritizing, but holy moly, like that's not a couple of little things to do. That's a lot of big things to do. So how did you manage that, and how did you find, like, in terms of prioritization, how did you decide what was important and how you spent your time?
Mm. So I am somebody who, up until I turned 30 and made the decision to get divorced, lived very others over self and a life of obligation.
Mm.
And people pleasing was definitely something I was very familiar with. So when I've gone through that divorce, I saw the world through a new lens and realized how short it is and realized how happiness was paramount and that I was willing to make the sacrifices that I needed to ensure that I was living a life of meaning and purpose and fulfillment. And so that's really where the business came from. So I would say it was a juggling act for a while. Definitely took a lot of time for me to really stop and think and consider what it was that happiness truly meant to me. And for me, for a lot of my life, I get lit up by this work, and clearly you do too. So it's a struggle because I have the propensity to be a workaholic, but
Hmm.
I don't see it in that way
Hmm.
because it really does nourish me in this way that I don't necessarily always experience in a lot of the other aspects of my life. I'm somebody who is very deep and intense and sensitive and have really high emotional intelligence. And so I seek that out in other people. And so for a lot of this, it was just, what is the next thing? I have this opportunity, or I see this need, or I have this potential to take this other thing on. And very similar to what we talked about in the episode when you were on my show, I feel like I have just the capability to do so much. And if there's a need and I have the ability to fulfill it, I'm going to do that. And
Hmm.
so it wasn't until very recently that I realized that I don't have to do everything. Do I have the capability to do it all? Sure. Can't do
Yep.
it all at once. And do I
Hmm.
have to be the one that is
Right.
it all? No.
Isn't that the question of the day? Do I have to be the one? Yes, that is such a good question. And you're exactly right. I feel exactly the same way. I can do that, so I should do that. You need something, I should be the person to deliver that to you. But also, as I've matured, because I have matured a little bit, what I've recognized is, yeah, I have a magic. I have an ability to help people, and there are people that I should be helping. But maybe I'm not always the right person, and maybe somebody can do this different or somebody can do this better. And I think that leads me into two things that you said. One was like being lonely while you are being a professional, you are being a mom, you are doing all of the things, and you feel lonely. And I think that really resonates for me because at one point in my life, especially as my three boys were probably like in their teenage years, happily married, have a great relationship with my parents, have good friends, raising the boys. I love teenage boys, by the way. Like, I'm not a big fan of babies. They're fine. But teenage boys and the challenge that comes with them is amazing. Oh, they're such jerks, but they're such needy little loving souls at the same time. And I love that challenge. So having them as teenagers and then the exploration of where they're going to go and how they're going to land in life was so fun for me, but still I felt lonely, and I didn't feel like I had good friends and good connections and felt like I was really missing something. And I don't think that that actually had anything to do with those relationships and those connections. And I think it was actually me and that drive and missing something, which comes back to, again, that conversation that we just had, that purpose and that fulfillment and missing out on something there. I think that's where that sense of loneliness was coming from, and where I think a lot of people, especially women, will end up in terms of like identity and as you move through your seasons of life, and that identity changes and your responsibilities change. So that was one piece that's leading me to a three-part question. So that was one. And then you also mentioned that you have a team of 30 people. I have managed teams of 30 people, and I will tell you that it is not an easy thing to do, and it takes a high level of emotional intelligence to be able to navigate that and to be able to serve, because that is not about supervising people. It is not about managing people. It is about leading people, and it is about motivating people and helping them understand your perspective as well as understanding their perspective. And that's how you get really good quality work out of people. And again, with the word expectations, people, if you go back and listen to Julia's podcast and her interview with me, I think I said the word expectations like 800 times because it's a word that's sitting on me tonight. But you have to set those expectations for a team that large and then help them navigate the process and hear them and serve them so that they are giving you what you need. And so, all of that to lead me into this conversation around emotional intelligence and what that means. And so I'll just kind of gear this up for you. For me, emotional intelligence is so important because you can be the smartest person in the room, but that's not going to make you the most successful person in the room. And I think for a long time, my value and my worth did not come from my own intelligence because I didn't believe that I was intelligent. I was led to believe that I was not. And we've had this conversation, and my group has had this conversation with like why that led me to 500 degrees that I did not necessarily need to have to do the work that I'm doing. But that's what I needed for my own ego, my own value, my own worth. what has made me successful is my emotional intelligence because I can read a room, I can read people, I can understand what motivates them. I have a high level of empathy. I can get where they're coming from. And then I can turn that around and figure out what they need in order to be more successful and to make their, I'm going to say, make their own happiness, make their own joy, and find their own fulfillment, their own purpose, and that clarity. So for you, what do you think is emotional intelligence and how do you use this in the work that you're doing? Because there's no doubt in my mind that you are using a very high level of emotional intelligence to be successful at the capacity that you are being successful.
So I see emotional intelligence as the approach that you have in your interactions being a relational being. So it's this openness not only to the pulse and being able to read the people that you're interacting with, but it is simultaneously the awareness of what is going on internally within you. And I
So
would
good.
argue that that is actually more of what leadership is as you're growing a team, because you can manage people, but the key is really to be able to manage your internal state and what your
Yes.
interactions with them is doing to you. And you have that responsibility to manage it and not put it on them, not react
Hmm.
toward them, prioritize them, make that interaction about what they need in that moment. Are they heard? Are they understood? Are they getting what they
Oh
need?
my gosh.
And then you have to go and deal with your own stuff when you're not in that interaction with people that
Uh-huh.
it's appropriate to do so with.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. So, so good. I just had an interaction today that because I one of the things you will hear me say if you work with me very often is I think I'm funny because I will spend a lot of time entertaining myself. And so I had an interaction today that this woman is not appreciating the work that we're doing together, or at least the work that I'm attempting to do with her. And so I think that I'm funny and like pushing out. And this is not in my coaching business. This is in my other professional world because
Yeah.
there's a requirement, there's something that we have to be doing together, and it's just such a struggle to do this and to connect these dots that there's no option, these dots have to be connected. And so I today was like, you know what, I'm going to step back, and instead of going at her the way that I have been going at her, I'm going to ask her to have coffee with me, and I'm going to connect with her so that we can find a common ground, so that we can find that we can enjoy each other and we can still do the hard things. Which also then leads me to there are two women in my life. And I think this is maybe, I don't, and I was going to say, I think this is harder for women. I don't think it's harder for women. I think men get away with more. And so I think that there are two women in my life that one professional, one personal, who, if they had the ability to reflect on how they impact people and how they're feeling and then how they're regulating and how they're putting that back out to the world, holy man, the success that they could have in their life. But because they will not or are not willing to do that deep dive and that reflection and then change their reaction to situations, they're stuck at a level. Some of their level is perfectly fine. They're happy with where they're at. I just recognize that there's so much more that could happen, and I don't understand why people don't do that. And so if they could just stop and say, if I stopped taking this feeling and turning it into this reaction, it would be something very different and it would be so successful. And I'm laughing because this is what I do on my podcast. We go with we go with the flow. My dog just busted into the room, so the door creaked open and now she's looking over for the peacock fountain that I have on the floor. So we're just going to go with it. We might hear some noise in the background and she might jump up and get in the microphone. So all of that to say, that I think that if we can stop and we can reflect and we can then use that as motivation to move forward, we can be so much more successful and achieve so much more in life.
Mhm. I couldn't agree with you more. And if only more people were able to show up in that way with that openness, with that willingness to learn and understand, and like listening to really comprehend and get that pulse instead of really just listening to respond. And it's one of those
Mm.
things that we've heard, I think, time and time again, that I understand on a whole nother level with managing all of these different personalities, clinicians that are at all different stages of their career. We have different age groups, we have different kind of developmental periods, people that are like fresh out of school, all the way to seasoned clinicians that have been doing this for decades. So it has really challenged me, but it's been one of the most invigorating, impactful, life changing experiences that has contributed to my own evolution that I've had yet career-wise.
Have you have you had any employees? So with you've got these 30 employees, you've got people that you're working with in your consulting business. Are there any like stories in particular?
Definitely have an example for you. So one of
Okay.
the things that has been so eye-opening for me on my journey is the Enneagram. Big fan of personality tests. I feel like just using them as a tool is really helpful. I think using them for good, and it's just one component of a much bigger puzzle. But knowing my number and knowing the number of the members on my team has been game changing because it gives us that language to really understand our core motivations and our core fears. So I'll give you two examples. So I'm an Enneagram 1. I'm a perfectionist with a 2 wing, which is the helper. So I am somebody who can
I feel like I might be right there with you.
so very strong moral compass, strong
Yeah.
sense of right and wrong, want to leave the world better than when I arrived, and perfectionistic tendencies with this really strong sense of other people and wanting to serve and wanting to help, kind of driving the bus. And so I have some members on my team. I would say the two that stick out in the most are the challengers. They're the 8s. So they're people that show up with this level of intensity in interactions, and conflict to them is intimacy. So you want to approach them as equal as opposed to you as their boss, and that
Yeah.
you kind of show up that you're working together towards some common end. And then I would say the 6s. So these are the loyalists. They can be very high anxiety. They can be catastrophizers. And it doesn't matter as a leader how much you support and guide and direct and respond. They're always going to have that level of anxiety no matter what. And so I would say my approach with these two different types has been so different. And they almost activate me in different ways. And so I guess an
Hmm.
example that I could give would be, I think just in general, over time, when you have somebody that's with you for an extended period and you are in regular contact with them and they're doing their work and you're doing your work, that you want to collaborate and you want to work together. But I think there's more of these themes instead of specific interactions where, even though I'm aware of this, it doesn't mean that it doesn't still necessarily activate me and make those interactions challenging. I think it's more
Hmm.
so that I know to take a beat. And so I'm not
Hmm.
necessarily always responding in the moment. I really am showing up for them, listening to where they're coming from, listening to their perspective, keeping in check, okay, I think their fear is activated here, and really this is their anxiety, or really this is for the 8s, their desire to help and their desire to kind of be this advocate, and that I'm going to respect that and honor that. And now I'm able to share a little bit more of, after I address that, where I'm coming from and what's showing
Hmm.
up for me. Not in the way that they have to own it or do anything about it, but more that I understand them on a deeper level and I want to be able to offer them the same. So I know not
Oh
purpose
my.
specific, but
No, I love that because I think I think that's something that's missing in our world today, right? Like you're not making an excuse and allowing this behavior to happen or to allow people to misbehave or not produce.
Mhm.
You're figuring out how do you get them to be effective and efficient in a way that works for them. And so
Yeah.
I feel like that comes down to communication, which is another thing that I think we're just doing a really bad job at in general. There's so many people that like they'll share like these are the problems that I'm having. Okay, well what did they say when you told them that? Oh, I would never tell them that. Okay, well how do you expect your husband to fix the fact that you just want him to put the laundry away at one time? If you've not asked him to put the laundry away or let him know that that's a problem that you are the one feeling like you've got all this responsibility. Just and a super, super high
Yeah.
level example. But if you're not communicating what you need or what would make you happy, then you can't expect that somebody's going to provide that for you. And I think that's so base level. For me, that feels so base level, but it is not for so many people. And so we have to figure out how do we navigate that. And I think
Mhm.
that in terms of emotional intelligence, that is one of the things we have to be talking about. But I love that you use the Enneagram. That is not one I've ever done. I look at it every once in a while and think it's time for me to do this, and I just never have done it. I've used all of them, all of the other tests. I think I've done every other one except for that, and have even taught them to some college classes. So, I know where I land, and I knew the one that I've been using the most recently at work is Working Genius. I'm not sure if you've heard of that or you're familiar with that. And I think it's so easy for a team to navigate that one. And it's enlightening, but it doesn't matter like which one you use or what you find out of it. It brings us back to this level of connection or this level of reflection and understanding this is who I am at my core. And then this is how I learned from that. I don't create excuses around that, but this is how I learn from that. And then how I make myself better based on that. So in the Working Genius, one of the things that I found about myself is that tenacity is not my thing. And I was like, oh, that explains so much. Like I have such a high level of discernment, and I forget what the other one is. It's the E that basically has to do with motivating people and getting people to react in the way that you want them to react and get them moving and to create change. I'm really good at those things, but like not necessarily good at finishing the project, which is hysterical because my team in my professional job, I do this thing where I like I can't see me, but I'm shaking my hands like up in the air. I call it jazz hands. When I do jazz hands at work, everybody understands that this needs to happen and Tanya's not going to do it. Somebody else has to take this on and figure out how what the steps are. Because if it's got like I want to do the big picture and I want to figure out how we're going to make it happen, I don't want to be the person to make it happen. So I need somebody else to take that on. So my whole story there is to understand, like, I get that that's my weakness. So now I need to figure out either how to surround myself with a team that's going to pull that out for me, or I have to figure out how do I hold myself accountable or find somebody that's going to hold me accountable to finish those things out. So I think that's in terms of emotional intelligence, so
I
friggin'
love it. I'm
important.
gonna read more. Because what I love about it's really about finding whatever resonates and whatever allows you to understand yourself on a deeper level, and then also do the same
Mhm.
for people that you're in relationship with. But what I love about the Enneagram is it is not necessarily putting you in a box, it's showing you what
Mm.
box you're in and how to get out. And we all
Oh,
have traits of all 9 types. And so you
yep.
have that ability, once you have that knowledge, to tap into some of those
Mhm.
qualities of the other types. So yeah, it's beautiful, but whatever
I
works.
love that. Yeah, I know. I love that. I'm gonna have to look at that one a little bit more. Because I also just find that fascinating and then try to figure out like how do you use that then with other people so that you can figure out how to help them move forward a little bit differently. So it's
Mhm.
fascinating. So how do you think that that ability to reflect and learn and grow, because that's really what this is all about, right? Like I'm using the word reflect and I'm putting that out there like that's the end goal, but really the end goal is about growth. So it's about learning something about yourself so that you can use that to do something a little bit differently and hopefully to make positive change. So how do you feel like that might sort of lend itself to self-care? Because that's always the end goal is how do we take care of ourselves so that we're doing better. So how do you
Mhm.
feel like you use these tools or this process in order to maybe just grow a little bit and feel a little bit better?
Because I think what it all comes down to, regardless of how we get there, is that we are ultimately responsible for ourselves. And so once we accept
Oh, that in itself is so deep. You are responsible.
right? But, like, once we accept that responsibility and we remove the responsibility from all of these externals, then it comes down to self-care becomes a non-negotiable. I think that once we learn more about us, we learn what lights us up. We learn about what our purpose is, what gives our life meaning. And we also recognize that we show up best when we are doing all of those things and paving the way and making room for us to do more of that. So I see the two going hand in hand. It's that personal
Mhm.
responsibility and ownership. How do we get there? I think it really is taking care of ourselves, knowing what works for us, and making that a priority, which is not always easy.
It is totally not easy. Oh, that first statement, like you just have to understand that you are responsible. I love that so much because you are. However, you get to ask for the help that you need so that you can do the things that are the priority, right? Like if you are, whatever your situation is, if you're a single mom and you need to incorporate the child into the self-care process, you do that. If you are married or you have a partner or you have loved ones that can help you with whatever is happening, if you have coworkers that are not pulling their weight, whatever that is, you you also get to set those boundaries and create that level of expectation so that you are accepting responsibility versus just casting out there the excuses of why you're not doing something, or blaming, or blaming is a blaming and victimization. Oh, those are big ones too. Man, I feel like we could probably talk about this for another 2 hours.
Well, I think the things that are coming up for me is we teach people how to treat us, and that's our responsibility
Right.
to know that
Yes.
and
Hmm.
to voice it.
Hmm.
But I would also say that when you are in a leadership position, I don't see it as optional for you to continue to work on your own growth and your own evolution.
Mm.
Because if
Yep.
you're going to expect other people to complete a task, you're responsible for everything up until that task completion, in my mind. It's being
Hmm.
really clear about what the expectation is. It's giving them all of the tools to be successful in accomplishing that task. It's follow up to make sure that they are fulfilling the expectation, getting what they need, doing the thing, right? And then you kind of rinse and repeat. So I
Hmm.
do think it all comes back to us. And the sooner we realize that, the harder it's going to be in the beginning, but the easier it's going to be in the long run.
So true. So true.
Mhm.
It's just like everything. It's so hard to get started, but once you get it started and you like the micro steps, right? Like you don't have, it's not everything all at once, just like anything that we do in life. It's not
Mhm.
just like, this is the new me. Here I am showing up for the world and I have all these things that have to happen. It's you're setting one at a time, and then you're allowing that to snowball into the next thing, into the next thing, into the next thing. And I can just imagine what an amazing leader you are, because I have had the best of the best and the worst of the worst. And there is nothing worse than a leader that is like, oh, I asked her, she didn't do it, she didn't do it. And so number one, maybe you didn't ask me to do it. Number two, you didn't give me the tools that I needed to do it. Number three, it's not even doable. So why are you throwing me under the bus and making me look bad and making you try to look good? Because the other side of that is nobody believes you look good when you're just throwing those people under the bus and you're not just helping them navigate that process and helping them be their best. And that is when you get the best work out of those people.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
So, what would you say would be one or two things that somebody could take away to start this process of reflection, of growth? If I maybe I don't have Julia as a leader that can help me through this, and I might not have a great boss or a great leader. And so how do I, even in my own personal life, how do I start to this process of reflection or growth, or even just looking at my own emotional intelligence and figuring out how do I move forward through them?
So I think the key thing, and I know that this is something you're going to resonate with, it's obviously like starting with the basics and making sure that you're taking care of all the essentials, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we talked in our episode about
Yep.
sleep, nutrition, and moving your body and all of those things. Once that is in check and you've prioritized that, I feel that you are setting yourself up for success to show up as a better version of you in your interactions. So if you're the employee and you have a supervisor or a leader that doesn't have the skills that we're talking about, maybe lacks that self awareness, some of those steps in the process are missing. Again, it comes back to you. So if you're prioritizing those basic needs, if you are getting really clear on what it is that you need, if you build your confidence in your ability to articulate that, we have that ability to teach other people how to treat us, and know that if the person you are in the interaction with is not at that same level that you are, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you can't still progress and move forward. And I think you're just going to get better at being an advocate, and your emotional intelligence is going to increase. You're going to attract more people that appreciate that in you, respect that in you, that are on a similar journey. And just know that the pool does get smaller as we go through life. The more awareness we have, the more we know ourselves, the more we're traveling in different circles, the easier it is to identify the people that are not on our same plane or our same
Mm.
journey. And it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be the exact journey, it just has to be
Yep.
people that are open. So if you share
Mhm.
with somebody, this is what I need, or I thought a lot about our interaction and there was something in that that didn't work for me. If that person is not able to hear that and take some consideration and maybe make an adjustment in a future interaction, it's a possibility that that might not be your person. That might not be the right leader. That might not be the right
Mhm.
supervisor, partner, friend, whatever it may be. If that continues to happen over and over again, and so you just are building up your confidence to be able to do what you need to surround yourself with more of those people that get it, want to understand, and want to respect what it is that you're expressing.
I love that. And I think that's twofold, right? Like one is some of that comes with growth. You recognize what you need and you're quicker to recognize what you're getting or not getting or who's going to be able to deliver that to you. So, just like dating, you might you're when you're younger, you'll date all the people because they're like it's fun and it's adventurous, but then as you get older, you get a little bit more, narrow-minded about what it is you want out of a relationship and that sort of thing. Oh shoot, what was the second point of that? Oh, I forget what the second point was now. I've moved on. There was a second point that I don't remember.
Point.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that one. Um, yeah, we'll leave it at that. And there was something really good there. So we'll come back to it if we get it. So I think that this is awesome. And I think that in terms of like what we can get out of this information and how you move forward and how it always comes back to serving yourself so that you can be better and you can feel better and you can do better so that you then show up the way that you want to. So I
Mhm.
think that that is just a really great conversation that leads us into all of those things. So why don't we wrap this up with you letting our audience know how they can connect with you?
Yeah, so Compassionate Consulting Company is where I help entrepreneurs at various stages of their business. You can find the link to the Compassionate Climb on there, all of my social media links. I am having a lot of fun on social media these days. I'm
I love
really
your
learning to
social
embrace
media.
it.
Yep, I love it. You are having fun with it and it looks fun, so that I appreciate that.
And then I also provide Enneagram trainings to teams on how to improve their relationships, their communication, minimize conflict, and really just deepen their understanding of one another. So if anybody has any interest, feel free to complete the contact form on compassionateconsultingcompany.com.
I always love talking with Julia, so I am hoping that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If so, please take just a moment to leave a 5-star review. And if you leave a comment, I just might read it on the air. And then, if you, my friend, are ready for transformation, it is time for us to work together. I just opened some one-on-one coaching spots. The price is super discounted for a very limited amount of time. So, if you are looking for practical tools, accountability, and most importantly, clarity and confidence, then it is time for us to get started. Do not wait. Sign up now. You can do that over on my website, www.drtanyab.com/coach, and you can find the link for that in the notes. I will see you soon.